I'm with Rachael Dival for Home for Good. Now, Rachael, what is Home for Good?
Home for Good is an organisation, charity, headed up by Krish Kandaya, and he has instigated this support network for churches and families to support them through fostering and adoption and wrapping around as churches around the family that are supporting.
And when were you started as an organisation, and why were you started?
So it started, I think, around 5 years ago, but probably the ideas before that with Krish and the guys from Evangelical Alliance, Care for the Family, and the other organisation I can't remember right now off the top of my head, I'm really sorry, but basically they looked at their database of all the churches involved in their organisation. It was Spring Harvest, by the way, and they looked at their database of churches involved, and they had 15,000 churches on their database, and at that time in the care system there were 15,000 children in need of individual long-term homes or foster placements or temporary placements. So they looked at those numbers and actually said that if one family from every church was able to take a child out of that system to foster or adopt, actually we'd eradicate the need for social care in that area. So it's an incredible thing, but actually with those big numbers you can actually suddenly go, do you know what, it's okay, we can do it as a one church, one family sort of idea. So yeah, really cool.
So as a big number, it's quite daunting, but if you think about if every church could just take one child, just one family, it could totally change it.
Totally eradicate that need, and the whole point is, you know, when we're working with children, obviously that have additional needs or have had trauma in their life, you know, it's a difficult journey to do for that family who are supporting that child. So actually it's about the church wrapping around that family and supporting them in how they can, you know, make meals, do the ironing, you know, support, particularly if they've already got birth children in that family, how they can actually come alongside and just maybe give that parent that time with the birth children or the foster or adopted child, so that there's individual relationships built and maintained, really. So it's really, really important.
So how do you approach the church about the subject?
I think it would depend on different churches. I mean, obviously, Krish, there's sort of been national campaigns regarding Adoption Sunday. The new one is coming up. So this year's Adoption Sunday is November the 5th. So churches can sign up at the website, at the Home for Good website, and actually agree to sort of stand. And there's videos and whole sort of ideas of what you can do as a church on that day to promote adoption and where it fits in with God's plan for families. But also, it's just that whole wrap-around system. So churches will take on board some more than others, but basically it's about having that conversation with your leaders, really, and saying, actually, this is part of God's plan, adoption. He adopted us into his family. We're heirs, co-heirs with Jesus. So actually it's a biblical principle that churches can take on board. So it's a really great thing. And there's a number of resources on the website that will help support, and different churches can sort of say, yeah, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. And some of that's about training children's workers and youth workers and wider sort of pastoral care systems in churches of the needs of those children, of those families, supporting those, and obviously the adults as well.
Are congregation members responding to this?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There are certain churches and certain areas in the country. There's an amazing movement going on in Liverpool, for example, and they've come alongside the local council and are pretty much resourcing more families who are willing to foster and adopt than the county council would need. So there's just some awesome things going on with this. So there are other churches that are just praying into it and supporting what they can in their local area or in individual families within their community. So there's just so much. It's really hard to sort of put into words everything that you can do, but it's just about stepping into it and saying, okay, God, what can we do in this situation? How can we make a difference?
Now there's a refugee crisis at the moment. Are you working with refugees as well?
Home for Good are, definitely. So Krish has just written a new book called Stranger, and it identifies that sort of whole thing of refugee, and Home for Good have definitely been part of that conversation with the government in terms of trying to really say we need to do more. You know, it's something, again, God says, you know, we're about taking in the stranger, being a friend to the friendless, you know, caring for orphans and widows. So all of that is biblical principle. So there's, you know, we can't really turn our backs on that.
Now, you were adopted yourself. Was that a negative or a positive thing?
For me, incredibly positive. So I was adopted as a baby, so I have no living memory of anything else, so I don't sort of have that ongoing trauma side of things. But I do talk about my jigsaw puzzle of a picture of my life story. So for me, the adoption part is probably a cloud in the sky. I know it's a cloud because of its position, and I know it's not important to the rest of the picture. It's part of my story, but it doesn't define my story in some ways. For other people, it might be a much more full-on character that distorts their jigsaw puzzle almost. And different people have different journeys in that. We do have jelly. I call it my jelly wobble foundation. So if I get poked a little bit and feel a bit insecure, sometimes it wobbles. Occasionally it wobbles far greater, and it's quite a tremor. So things like I lost my birth certificate after getting married at 24. So that was my first honest big wobble, because I suddenly didn't know who I was. But I'm grateful that I had some amazing people around me at the time who just went, yeah, you do. I was able to get a new certificate quite simply by being me. And also in that sense, I've gone on a journey as well, and because I know I am God's, I know whose I am, and that actually has created the foundation that I can move on from in whatever comes my way. So yeah.
Does the adopted person have a lot of questions that he wants answered?
Sometimes, and I think that all depends on the secure adoption. If you've had a secure adoption, I don't have many questions. I'm very fortunate in the sense I do know some of my background. I know some of my birth family characteristics, likes, dislikes, all of those sorts of things. So there's an element of that's enough. I don't have that desire. I did when I had my birth child. I did wonder as I was pregnant, I wondered if I was going to need some answers and need sort of some of the things that perhaps you think about but aren't dwelling on. You know, you don't have someone necessarily that you look like, you don't have those blood ties, and you wonder if that's going to be important. For me, I wondered whether it was going to be, I couldn't give this baby up, and I am actually in awe of my birth mother who could, and she was willing to go through the pregnancy and actually give me up and for wanting to have a better life. So we were, you know, I'm actually in a blessed position for that, and I see that as a positive. But you know, when I remember being in the hospital with my son and just looking at him and going, no, I don't feel any different. And for me, that's the right decision. For others, it's a seeking quest that they need some answers. And I think, again, that will depend on how your experience possibly before you were adopted, what family you've been adopted into, and whether that's been a true acceptance of who you are. I've been really blessed and nurtured. I know that God said I needed the DNA of my birth parents, but I needed to be nurtured in my parents' family set up, so that actually I could be the best person and bring to fruition the purposes he's put on my heart. So yeah, it's been good.
Are you planning to adopt yourself?
I am. I'm in the middle of the adoption process at the moment. So I'm a single mum adopter. Life has thrown a few curveballs. So I thought I wasn't going to be able to do that because of housing situations and not having enough bedrooms. But God's miraculously stepped in, which has been amazing. So we moved in December. So we've just completed phase 1, which is all the sort of background references, DSB and things like that, checks that have to be done, and we're just about to, we are actually launched into a phase 2, which is the sort of home visits, all the personal information, the training, all of those sorts of things, and then we will actually go to approval panel in December, and then matching after that with hope.
How long does it take to adopt a child?
So the last government sort of made some big changes in the adoption sort of process, and in the best case scenario, it can take as little as 6 months, which obviously is still a good amount of time, but there's an awful lot of information to go through and to ensure that the children are being placed in homes that are prepared and ready and going to be the best for both the family themselves, but also the child coming into that family. You know, we want the best matches, because the best matches and with the best support and an awareness of what that child needs are going to create secure adoptions for their future as well. So yeah.
Why do you do what you do?
Oh, that's a really tricky one. Why do? I think it's always been there. For me, personally, I've always wanted to adopt and probably foster in the future too, purely because I've gained so much. I know I am who I am because my parents actually went, yeah, we can do that. And they changed my life. They changed my adoptive siblings' life as well. And we are forever grateful for God placing us in that family. So it has always been part of my plan, I suppose, really, for want of a better word, and God's will, I would say too, to actually give that back as well. And I've been really blessed with an amazing 17-year-old son who's actually for it as well. So, because you can't do it if it's just you, it's got to be that wraparound family, not just the church family, but your individual and blood or adoptive relatives too.
What's your prayer for those who are looking to be adopted?
My prayer for them is just that God would just guard their hearts, actually, because when children are going through major trauma of being removed from homes, and for all different circumstances create that child being in the care system. But my heart is my prayer for them is their heart is guarded, and actually that God would enable them to create good attachments to new families, whether that's for in a foster care situation or whether that's their permanent forever home. So that's my heart's desire for all children, to be fair. Definitely.
Okay, Rachel, thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you.